This conference will now be recorded.
Hello and good afternoon. Welcome to a special webinar just for University of Warwick graduates. Lovely to have you along today, as I'd like to share some insights from our experience working with graduates and recruiters right now during this pandemic. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have some reassurance, some positive ideas to move forward and help you get the careers that you all deserve right now. If you could all make sure that your audio and video is turned off, that will be a great help. I'm going to try and whiz through this, probably take about 20 minutes or so, but it is being recorded, so you can play this back on our YouTube channel, which I will share at the end. And there will be the opportunity to ask any questions, so use the chat box if you have any questions for maybe the last 10 minutes or so. I will answer those for you. Okay, so let's concentrate on the slides right now. So first of all, my name's Dan Hawes. I'm from the Graduate Recruitment Bureau, or GRB. If you don't know, we are the go-to platform for high caliber university students, graduates and recruiters. We've actually placed many Warwick University graduates over the years. So we're delighted to be invited today by your career service to help more graduates in these extremely challenging times. But GRB was established back in 1997 by two graduates. We now have over 40 staff and we serve over 1,800 clients. So these are companies across all sectors. Many of them we will have heard of, like Post Office, IBM, Unilever and Ocado, to name but a few, but also several fast-growing SMEs, the kind of companies that go below the radar for a lot of graduates, but they're all looking for graduate talent. So GRB work with a huge range of companies, and in that time we've successfully placed over 8,000 graduates with our clients, all starting full-time graduate level jobs. So let's start with the headlines. So we're all familiar with a lot of these headlines I've curated here. A lot of them from the Financial Times. So you know, some here about the job prospects for the class of 2020. You know, what's going to happen. Articles here about young and low-skilled people being hit the hardest as coronavirus damps the hopes for the future. So you know. A huge effect for the 18 to 24-year-old age group, and you know the economy's taken a hit. There's some articles there on the far right. You know, we're in a recession, but the government are spending huge amounts of money to prop up the economy. So everything's been disrupted right now, and these headlines paint a pretty bleak picture for graduates about to enter the jobs market. So the situation we're in. Okay, so this is a pandemic. Unfortunately, this has killed over 1 million people. It's an awful situation that we're on a global scale. It's put the brakes on social mobility and also economic growth. This is a global recession. All economies are suffering in one way or another. In the UK, in Q2, the GDP dropped by almost 20%. Which is a huge drop. The last recession we had was in 2009, and we've had other downturns before with 9/11, the dot-com bubble, and various things. But the pandemic has really made this a unique situation. Our economy is suffering hugely. Predictions trying to get back to normal economic levels of 2019 are anything from 1 year to 3 years. So having a vaccine on the horizon certainly helps give us some hope as to the economy returning to a better state. Unfortunately, people have been let go. There have been 750,000 people have been made redundant. That's a huge number. It's pushed the unemployment figures up to around 4.8%, but particularly higher with the 18 to 24-year-old group, with 15% unemployed. Unfortunately, they've turned to universal credit. So at the start of the pandemic, there were 235,000 18 to 24-year-olds claiming universal credit. In September, unfortunately, that crept up massively to 529,400 individuals. So, really, really hard for 18 to 24-year-olds to find work right now, obviously. Factor in that 500,000 graduates approximately enter the jobs market in the summer, and you've got, an economy that cannot support every single individual right now. So it's very, very challenging, very, very competitive, especially for the young age group. So what we've found is that recruiters haven't actually stopped hiring graduates. That's the good news. What they have done is either deferred their start dates or they're actually postponing their recruitment, pushing it back. And maybe in January or February of next year, this backlog will finally be released. We don't know, but the good news is that they are still looking for graduates, but they have postponed or delayed start dates. Now, this is usually for the bigger recruiters. For smaller firms, SMEs or startups, their priority is survival. So they're having cash flow issues. And depending on the sector they're in, some may not make it. So, a real mixed picture there. Very, very different depending on the sector that these organisations operate in as to how they've been affected. But the graduate labour market has suffered significant damage. Certain sectors like the arts, have been really hit badly. Certain parts of retail, hospitality, leisure, tourism, aviation, anything where there's face-to-face interaction will have taken a long-term hit. If they don't survive, will take a long time to get back. What we found from previous recessions are that graduates tend to steer away from certain sectors and choose safer career options that offer more financial and job security. So we've seen an uptick in graduates applying for the public sector, so at the civil service, but also teaching. So, there are opportunities, and graduates do feel more risk averse right now. They don't want to be in this situation again when we have another downturn. So they want something that is more robust, more secure, and that won't be as affected by downturns in the future. And finally, some graduates who are popping out of university right now, their degrees, may not have actually prepared them for the jobs in this new economy. So, that's a big concern for certain graduates. That's a real shame, and through no fault of their own. So there are just a few things that are, generally paint a pretty bleak picture, but we've found some more positive headlines, and this is what we want to share with you, really, because there is some good news out there. So these are some of the headlines from those same publications, the FT, the BBC, and also some research findings. So, you can see here there's the FT reported hiring demand brings cheer for MBA graduates. Now, some of you may not be MBA graduates, but what it says is that employers do value the skills that graduates can bring to the workplace. So there will be a trickle-down effect from this as well. So that's a very encouraging piece of news in the last couple of months. Also, with regard to some sectors that are surging through this time, housing, there's a housing boom, fueling a recovery in construction. So there's an industry that's ploughing through. Some parts of retail aren't doing so well, others are. So with everyone staying at home more, maybe they're turning to home improvements. And IKEA reported a record year for store launches. So that's a good indication. People are spending money in other ways. Plus, the government have spent so much money, more than the previous recession, to support the economy. So the Bank of England injects an extra £150 billion into the economy a couple of weeks ago. And we all know that the Chancellor has extended the furlough scheme to the end of March, which means a huge amount to employers and employees, gives them a little bit more security in the next few months. And also they launched the Kickstart program directly aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds. And that's actually created 19,000 jobs, which is absolutely brilliant. There's another piece of research right at the end here that talks about 10 of the fastest growing industries right now. I'd strongly suggest you explore these sectors. This is produced by IBIS World, so Google that and find out more about these particular sectors. So there's reference to finance here, tech, online food ordering, so e-commerce, things like that. It's definitely worth exploring some of these sectors that are growing, and they will need graduates. Now, we get lots of surveys and research and other bits of information in our industry that I'm delighted to be able to share with you. Again, that kind of back up the fact that there are some positives to be found right now. So first of all, the level of vacancies, according to job boards, are running at just over 50% of normal rates. So, that's not brilliant, but it is climbing slowly. So, we may have already passed the bottom point of this dip, and we may slowly be coming out of it. So that's an encouraging sign. More employers are slowly starting to advertise jobs on job boards. Some sectors I mentioned before in that piece of research are less affected than other areas of the economy. Okay, so health, we all know they're working around the clock, working on these vaccines, but there's all various other projects that they were working on before now, so they need extra people. Social care, obviously, is going to need more people as an industry right now to look after those who are vulnerable. IT, lots of sectors are doing extremely well. They may be hard to find. It might be not the big obvious firms, but there are thousands and thousands of these technical firms that are requiring graduates with technical skills to help them. Finance as well. I mean, people and companies are still investing, so that's a huge area for graduates to find work. Now, many employers are at least discussing recruiting. If they're on the fence, they're at least talking about it, if the conditions permit, after they've missed their normal recruitment round earlier this year. So this goes back to what I was saying before about companies just putting things on hold, waiting for conditions to improve, and gradually, month by month, we're finding that employers, if they're not talking about it, they're actually starting to put plans together, which is very encouraging. There's also a huge survey with business leaders by the Management Today magazine and Hayes Recruitment, huge recruitment agency. And they found that 55% of business leaders would now be more likely to consider hiring an employee who is actually not within commuting distance to the office. Now, the reason I say this is because the whole working from home thing has really proven quite a success with a lot of companies, and the chances are they'll carry on in one shape or form. For graduates, this means that you don't have to go to London necessarily to find a job. You could stay in Warwick, for instance, and if that company is happy for you to work from home, then that's a brilliant change in the situation where you don't actually have to relocate. So it's opened up opportunities for graduates all over the UK now. But not only that, companies that are maybe based in the States, they can have someone working in the UK remotely as well. So, you're also going to be exposed to companies all over the world if you're happy to work from home and they can offer it. So, 55%, that's very, very encouraging. That was not something that may have been reported this time last year. Another bit of good news is although the economy dipped in Q2, in Q3, it actually grew by 15.5%. So there's definitely a rebound there. So we'll see how Q4 pans out when we get the figures in early January. But that's very encouraging that it's come back and it hasn't gone back down. The other thing to note is there's a huge number of companies that have been set up. Now, many of these will have been from people who were made redundant, and they got redundancy pay. Maybe it was a dream to set up a business. Maybe this has enabled them to do that. And not all of them will go the distance, and some may never grow that fast. But if this is a record year for new companies being registered, they're going to grow, they're going to need people, and graduates are cheaper hires than experienced people. And we work with a lot of startups and SMEs, and they find graduates are the perfect skill set. So that's very encouraging, I think. And also here, British Chamber of Commerce, so thousands of members did a quarterly survey, and 41% of their firms said they expected their turnover to actually increase over the next 12 months. That was a couple of months ago, that report. So 41% actually expecting to grow. So, you know, it's wrong to assume all companies are not looking for graduates. They're struggling. You know, you read the headlines. It's not the case for every single company. You need to look carefully at the sector and find these growth areas, and they are the ones who will be able to offer careers for graduates right now. Now, if we zone in on the graduate recruitment industry itself, there are two surveys here. They both show roughly over the last 10 years or so how hiring trends have gone up and down. So you can see right at the end here, the number of vacancies for graduates this year was down by 12%. On the other one, there, the top 100 survey, that was down by 10.8%. So it both displays a downward trend there for this year. Now, if we look at the last recession in 2009, it was actually 25%, so it's not actually as bad as the last recession. Predictions for 2021, if we follow the same trajectory as the last recession, then we will have another negative year of graduate recruitment vacancies being on the market, but it's not as drastic. You know, you can see that the trend here from these two charts. Now, the first one there was from the Institute of Student Employers. We're members of the Institute, or the ISE. Strongly recommend you visit their website. They have lots of news, updates, publications that really give you an idea about how the graduate recruitment industry is faring at the moment. But I just thought I'd share these two graphics with you, because they do show that vacancies have dipped this year, but not as bad. Now, if we look at certain sectors within graduate recruitment, within the graduate recruitment industry, you can see here, top of the list is IT, programming and development. Oops. This historically has been a huge area for graduates. You don't have to be an IT graduate, by the way, but you do need to display certain skill sets to get into this occupation. But 31% of 171 organizations have vacancies in IT. So that's very, very encouraging. Engineering is the next one, financial management, and then legal. So you can go down this list and you can identify those particular job occupations, rather, that are in huge demand right now. And that's with some very, very big recruiters right now. So I think that's very, very encouraging. And you can see there that 40% of respondents were actually saying they found they were actually difficult, at least one role was difficult to recruit to. So, you know, these recruiters are having difficulties finding graduates for these roles. You know, graduates are out there and the jobs are there. So it's definitely worth exploring some of these sectors a little bit more. And as I said, you know, if you want to get into the IT sector, don't assume that, you know, the jobs all require an IT degree. IT firms still have finance departments, marketing departments, sales departments, operations, HR, everything a normal company would have. So look beyond just assuming an IT firm would require IT graduates. There'll be other direct entry roles, jobs that require a degree that may not be on a scheme, for instance. So have a look at the ISE website for a bit more information on that particular chart. Now, a little bit more information on that survey. So I said there that 12% of members said they'd be recruiting less. For 2021, they've said 15%. Still, you know, it's not that big. It's still not as bad as the 2009 recession. And you know, if you flip that, 85% of graduate recruiters are going to carry on recruiting the same or more. So that's actually what we should be paying attention to. 85% of graduate recruiters next year will be recruiting the same or more graduates in 2021. So that's very, very good. Now, the bit of bad news here is internships, apprenticeship and placements. These have been hit massively, unfortunately, which is a real shame for students who get these roles during summer breaks or year-out placements, but also for graduates who would like to have internships as well. Unfortunately, companies have stopped some of those programs. Now, why are graduate recruiters, some of them, not recruiting as many? Well, understandably, 39% were saying uncertainty. Okay, it's very hard to plan if you don't know how the future is going to pan out right now. So, as soon as we get some degree of certainty in the economy, at least, employers will feel far more confident investing in future talent, which is essentially what they're doing. They want to train graduates, so 3, 4, 5 years down the line, they're in very senior positions. So they need to be confident that there are going to be roles for those graduates down the line. So, as I said before, 31% of employers have delayed their start dates. So, not the majority, but the good news is none of them have actually stopped. 31% have just delayed it. So we're starting to have conversations with recruiters saying, you know what, we couldn't take on people for our scheme in September. We're probably going to take them in the new year instead. So that's very, very encouraging. So you need to keep abreast of what employers are doing right now. Now, the reduction in hiring is worse for SMEs. I mentioned before, survival is probably more of a priority than training graduates. But companies that are in certain sectors, we've mentioned before, so built environment, finance, professional services, energy, engineering and industry were some of the sectors that one of these reports suggested for SMEs anyway are really going to struggle. Now, it's also changed what's going on at university, and students are not only having to study remotely, but they can't go to career fairs, they can't go to fresher fairs or other events. So unfortunately, 69% of recruiters have actually cancelled visits to universities this year, and 72% cancelled going to career fairs, which is a real shame. But hopefully next year these will all be back on track. And career fairs will be back, and you'll have an opportunity to see recruiters face to face, ask questions, speak to graduates they've taken on, because they do serve a place in the recruitment calendar. But right now, they're not happening. Now, we did think that with restrictions on social mobility, that one of the big reasons graduate recruiters may not take graduates on was because maybe they can't interview online or do assessments or onboard or train graduates online. Can be very challenging, but most recruiters were actually doing this beforehand. If they weren't, they certainly are now. In fact, 71% of graduate recruiters have moved all their interviews online, understandably, but also with assessment centres, onboarding and training. So in actual fact, technology has saved the day here, and it has meant that recruiters can carry on with their recruitment process without actually seeing the graduates right now face to face. At some point, graduates will need to come into the office, but right now they're finding a workaround, which is absolutely brilliant news. 92% of business people have been moved to home working. Whether this will continue or there'll be a hybrid of working from home, working in the office remains to be seen, but the way we work in the future could change dramatically, and we can only see this as a positive. For instance, companies that may be restricted by their office size may now be able to recruit hundreds more because they're not restricted by the size of their office. So I think there's lots of positives, but for some people, they may not find they want to adjust to this. They prefer coming into the office. So I think maybe a hybrid model will be something we will see in the future. And also, finally, here, lots of employers haven't actually finalised their hiring plans for 2020. So, 40% of firms are sort of holding on to their vacancies. So who knows that maybe next month some companies will go, right, we need to get going. We need to hire graduates, and we need them to start in the new year. And we might see a huge influx of jobs hitting job boards and speaking to companies like GRB. So we've been speaking to lots of graduates, understandably. They're very anxious about the situation. So we've been offering them lots of positivity, lots of reassurance and guidance. We've seen downturns before, okay? And as I've said in this presentation, there are some positives to take from this. So do some research, look at those sectors I mentioned, and pay close attention to what's happening in the graduate recruitment industry. So I just want to give you some quick positive steps we think you can take to get the career you deserve. So first of all, don't lose sight of your career goals. I know it can be very challenging. Your dream job is not within arm's reach right now, perhaps. You may have to take a few other jobs and take a zigzag route. And it may take a few years before you land your dream job. I mean, this happens in good times as well, because these particular roles may be very, very competitive. So be realistic, but be very focused on your career goals. You know, why did you do your degree in the first place? You want to use your skills, and you have every right to get the career that you deserve. But right now, you may need to take a slightly different approach. Okay, avoid depressed sectors. I've gone on about these sectors that are really struggling. So obviously, the opportunities there will be far less. So aviation, tourism, leisure, hospitality. Instead, focus on those sectors that are seeing a surge. So online retail, e-commerce, any in-home service, healthcare we've talked about, finance and tech we've talked about, but there's a sector called fintech, definitely worth looking at. Cybersecurity, with more people working from home, systems need to be more secure, so there's no breach of data. So cybersecurity is a big area. Analytics, retailers are poring over statistics of buying behaviors to look at trends and forecast where demand might be. So they need some very smart graduates to go through all that data. And also huge numbers of technical consultancies that may go below the radar, but they do need talent right now. Now, I'm sure you'll have got a really nice CV after your time at Warwick Uni, not just your academic skills, but also other things you've done on the side. This is a living document, okay? So you still need to be moving forward, adding to your CV, bearing in mind all the time what will make you employable, what will you, employers value. And there's plenty of research out there that show what graduate recruiters really look for. Very often resilience comes very high on the list. So look for evidence of how you've been resilient, especially through this very, very challenging time. If you can demonstrate you've used your time productively, for instance, that's a great way to show it. So for instance, we've been encouraging graduates to practice virtual interviews. I mean, we encourage people to prepare as much as possible for interviews that are face-to-face normally, but virtual interviews, you need to approach it a little bit differently. It's daunting at the best of times, but doing it in a room where you may get disruptions, the Wi-Fi is not so great, all sorts of things can go wrong technically, but it's certainly worthwhile just practicing your answers to certain questions, and do that with a friend or a relative, just to make you more confident, so when the real interview comes along, you really nail it. When you're ready to enter the jobs market, use everything in your power to get noticed. So recruitment agencies, LinkedIn, you know, lots of employers are on there advertising jobs. You need to get on LinkedIn. All the obvious job boards, Monster, Reed, etc. Obviously your career service and various other things. One thing I would suggest that not many graduates think to do is send out speculative applications. So for instance, we spoke to a graduate and we asked him what company did he really want to work for. So he told us, and he said, but they've got no jobs on their website. We said, well, some companies may not actually advertise their jobs. Sometimes maybe they're working on the job description at that time, or they advertise it internally or ask for referrals, all sorts of reasons. Huge numbers of jobs do not get advertised, so don't let that put you off. Then try and find out who's the person with the recruitment decision-making power. So it could be the HR person, recruitment manager. If it's a smaller firm, it might be the office manager or the CEO. Send them a message on LinkedIn maybe, or an email with a really good tailored CV. And that chap got an interview the following day and actually got a job offer off the back of it. So it was absolutely brilliant. His timing was great, the skill set he had, the way he presented himself was very persuasive, and the employer wanted him. So it does work. It does take some homework, but don't be put off if you don't see jobs advertised on a company you want to work for on their website. When it comes to interviews, inevitably, one of the questions we're finding graduates having to deal with is what did you do in the lockdown? So if one of the skills they're looking for is resilience, you need to come back with a really strong answer. So, what did you do? Did you do any online learning courses? We know the Open University has them, Harvard University. So, if you haven't, now's a good time to maybe consider online learning as a way to show that you're moving forward, learning new skills. Maybe you've had the chance to volunteer with your local council, maybe delivering food to vulnerable people, things like that. Or maybe you have been lucky and you've had some contract work or part-time work. So you do need to have a very good answer for that particular question. What did you do in the lockdown? But you know what? If you don't want to enter the jobs market, that's fine too. You do have other options. You may wish to go abroad if you've got contacts in other countries. I mean, we're placing people in China, for instance, with teaching jobs because that economy was first in during this pandemic and now they're first out. So they're starting to see their economy return to normal in certain sectors. So if you want, you could look at other countries to start your career. While at university, you may have had a business on the side. Could this be an opportunity to start this full time? Many people do. You may want to consider that. What we do find is a huge number of graduates decide they'd rather ride this out. They're going to stay at university and they're going to do a postgraduate course. Nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it comes at a cost, and this is time out of the workplace. But if it's the right thing for you to do and it's the right course, then we're encouraging that just the same. So you do have other options. You do not have to enter the jobs market if you don't want to right now. And finally, what we found in the last recession of 2009, which not many graduates were aware of, is that many big recruiters had a shortfall. Okay, so in the recession last time, lots of graduates read the headlines. They thought, what's the point in applying for these companies? Many companies were actually still recruiting. I mean, this recession in 2009 affected the financial services industry, obviously the hardest, but graduates kind of assumed it affected lots of other sectors. So come the autumn, there were huge numbers of employers, because of this sort of misinformation, were finding they had a shortfall. They didn't have enough graduates. So who's to say this doesn't happen again? So go back to some of the big employers and their training schemes, and you may find that they've still got a few vacancies left because offers may have been rescinded, or they just weren't able to find those graduates in the first place. So a big tip for you is to go back to some of these big firms. Don't assume you've missed the boat, because some of them will actually have a shortfall as they did last time. Okay, hopefully that's been some useful for you and hopefully going to put you on the right track. One other thing to add is we've launched a sister website called graduatementor.uk. This is a free-to-use platform for graduates who want one-to-one career mentoring with a number of business leaders. We've actually got 100 mentors on there right now. You can book a 1-hour free session to brainstorm with them, go through your CV, get interview tips, all sorts of things. These business people are inspiring leaders in their field. They are from a broad range of sectors. You can choose the sector, and you can have these sessions. We're delighted to offer this to the University of Warwick and the graduates who are about to enter the jobs market. So definitely get onto this platform, graduatementor.uk. And this forms part of our larger campaign called #Help the COVID Generation. So we're going the extra mile here to help as many graduates in particularly challenging times. Okay, if you have any questions, please fire away. Use the chat box. As I said, this has been recorded, so I will be uploading this to our YouTube channel. And huge thanks for all of you coming along today and hearing this webinar, and also your career service for inviting me along today. So I'll hang on for a couple more minutes if you do have any questions. I'll also put in my email if you want to email me directly. I will put that in now. So yeah, we've had one question. Samantha, thank you very much. Do you think it's better to apply to normal jobs instead of grad schemes? I think that normal jobs, if they require a degree, and we call these kind of direct entry roles, then absolutely, by all means, you want to use your skill set. So I think applying for jobs that aren't necessarily on graduate schemes or programs is something that graduates definitely need to consider. They may be a bit harder to find actually, because you know, a lot of the time they will actually use agencies for that reason. They do struggle to find graduates because it's not so well known. But definitely keep your search broad. Don't restrict it initially. You know, narrow it down as you go forward. But you know, if you're an employer and a graduate applies for a normal job, as you put it, they're going to be delighted that you know, they've got someone with a really good skill set, and you'll have an advantage over a lot of people who haven't been to uni or popped out straight from school. So definitely apply for normal jobs as well as graduate schemes. One other question here from Wendy. Thank you very much. Employers are more likely to hire people having skills ready on day one instead of people needing training. Now, yes, there will be some companies that haven't got the time to train graduates, and they will want more experienced people. That would have happened without the pandemic or a recession anyway. But there are many companies who want to hire graduates for a number of reasons. Some actually feel that they have a kind of an obligation to help graduates right now. We've spoken to a few companies that have said, you know, we're still going to commit to hiring graduates because you know, we're on a mission here to help. They can't take every graduate on, but they feel a certain social responsibility. So many companies are still honouring their graduate programs. They want to train graduates up, and they see the value in them. So look carefully at the sectors. Some sectors, as I say, they want someone who's ready to go. Other sectors will have a mixture of staff who are experienced, but they also need graduates coming through, and they can train them. So it really does depend. One other question here from Samantha. What would you say for applications when we're competing against people who've been made redundant, have a lot more experience? Well, that's kind of similar to what I said there for Wendy. Yes, you may come up against people with more experience, but the trick is to sell your skill set. So you're fresh out of uni. What skills do you have that someone who's got a lot more experience in a certain area may not have? Look at the differentiating factors that you can bring to an employer. I mean, you will have some work experience, but what you're really selling is your potential. You know, you're going to help this company go through this pandemic. You know, you'll be a cheaper hire than an experienced person as well, but you do offer a lot more than someone who's been made redundant. So don't let that put you off. But you do need to think carefully about how you present yourself, because it is very, very competitive out there. One other question from Wendy. How's the job market prospect for international students? Well, we're working with a lot of international employers, so it really comes down to the sector, I guess, to answer your question. You know, I've mentioned those areas that are suffering badly, but look at those areas that are doing very, very well. Go back through this presentation, Wendy, and have a look at those employers. Now, there is a website called Student Circus, and they do actually list employers that take on international graduates. So check out Student Circus as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along today. It's been a pleasure to share some insights with you, and I do hope this has given you some positivity, some encouragement, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you.